Well, hey.
Hey man, how you doing? You good now?
Okay. Yeah.
I'm first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity, man. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Um uh, I'm just getting into the questions here. The first question I wanted to ask you, which I've been reading about this since my youth, and about 3 years ago I saw a picture of it on the net. Black Flag, when they first formed, you were called Panic.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, we called ourselves Panic, and then had to change our name because there was a band in France that had put out a 7-inch single, and we saw it in one of the record stores and said, "Oh no, 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 no! We can't call ourselves Panic because we will get sued."
Oh wow.
And who knows what happens when you're getting sued by a band over in France?
Were there any?
It could be all sorts of weird, crazy stuff. "You Americans, we saved you during the Revolutionary War, so you can't do this to us."
Damn. I've seen one picture of Panic playing live, and did Panic release anything? Your Panic ever?
No, 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 no. When we released music, we were Black Flag.
So how long was the band called Panic for then? Then you.
You know what? I couldn't even tell you. It was just a handful of months,
Oh,
maybe like 5 months, 6 months. Could have been a little bit longer. All of that stuff was flying by so fast that it was just difficult to get a handle on it.
and is it?
And unlike Henry Rollins, I didn't keep a diary. I didn't keep a daily list of everything that happened, and for future use in a book or what have you.
Yeah. Speaking of your book, I haven't read it entirely because I've got really bad dyslexia, but I do have the audio version from Audible, which I do own the physical version, but it's just taken me a while to get through it. Greg Gaffin, he released Anarchy Evolution about 8 years ago, and took me almost a year and a half to get through his. I've got a bad reading disorder, but I have listened.
Well, didn't he do an audio book for his book?
Um,
Didn't do an audio version for his
he
book?
might have. I'm not sure. I never actually looked into it if he did or not. I'll have to do that later on.
So, but you did end up reading his book.
Yeah, it took me about a year and a half to. It's just because when I look at words on a screen, like it pretty much scatters in my head. Like I can recognize the words, but sometimes it just doesn't compute properly.
Okay.
Dyslexia runs in the family.
Okay.
But
Well, that's too bad.
yeah,
So, what did you think of his book?
all in all, I mean, it's been several years since I've read it, but it did really change my ideals on life and all that, especially on atheism and naturalism and the story of Bad Religion, because Bad Religion, they don't really tend to. I mean, they do some interviews, but they don't really tend to. There's no Bad Religion biography out there. Like, there's no documentary of them. Like, no of a.
There will be.
I hope.
Well, the guy that co-wrote my book just got through writing the Bad Religion book.
I mean, they got their Live in the Palladium, which consists of a bunch of multiple different interviews from Brett and Greg and all them, but, like, NoFX has a backstage passport and 10 years of fucking up and all that. Bad Religion doesn't really do a lot of PR, and when they do, it's very limited, so it's kind of. But, yeah, just I learned the story of Bad Religion and all that, but one thing I was going to ask you, though, on the. So you've had, from the beginning, Black Flag, and then Circle Jerks, Bug Lamp. Was Bug Lamp, when was this?
That would have been in the 90s. That would have been, I'm terrible with dates. That was, I was talking with somebody about it yesterday. It was my brush with rock and roll superstardom, where our very last show, we were together for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
A little over 2 years. And I had a plan, and I was managing the band, but it was difficult to manage a band because one of the original guitar players was starting to become a big name producer, and he lived in New York, and he co-wrote Pet Cemetery with Dee Dee Ramone.
Oh, shit.
So he at one point was like the fifth member of the Ramones.
Wow.
I believe he actually produced a Ramones album. But he was one of the guitar players. The other guitar player decided to start smoking crack cocaine, and that was kind of his downfall. The drummer played in like 2 or 3 different bands, and it was like really difficult to wrangle all of these guys together to like create music and play shows. And I had a plan, and it was starting to fall into place. I kept telling everybody, be patient, be patient. The one guitar player couldn't play with us because he had to work on an album by a band called Circus of Power, a New York band. And then the other guitar player developed a crack habit, and he just kind of fell to the wayside. So I had to replace both of the guitar players, and of course the 2 new guitar players decided that they were going to start a band on their own. And I got to the point where I was tired of competing with everybody in the band to like get their attention, and when are we getting paid, and we just played the show, and how much did we get paid, and where's my cut, and it just our very last show, at the very end of the show, after we'd got through playing and the venue was starting to thin out, I'm standing in the middle of the room, and I'm talking with one of my friends who worked A&R at Geffen Records, and I was talking to another guy who worked for Warner Brother Records, and the guy from Warner Brothers said, "Come in on Monday morning, get here around 10. That's normally a good time." Everybody had got to work, and they'd had their coffee, and they were making their phone calls and doing whatever they needed to do, and that would be a good time. And I'll come to my office, and then we'll just go down the hall, and we'll sit with the president of the company. And I was like really excited about that, but at the same time, it was the 2 guitar players had already decided that they were going to quit because they had started this band that they were both in, and the drummer had already informed me that he was no longer going to be in the band because he was going to play with David Navarro, who was the guitar player in Jane's Addiction, and they were going to be recording an album for Rick Rubin, who was,
holy shit,
he's produced Johnny Cash, he's produced, yeah. Well, the list of his production accomplishments is mind-boggling. Red Hot Chili Peppers and Danzig and Masters of Reality and Donovan and all sorts of people. And that was an offer that our drummer couldn't refuse because he was going to be on a salary, and I couldn't continue like stringing the guys along. Like, look, I just talked with Chrysalis Records, and I just talked with Interscope Records, and I talked with probably 7 or 8 different record labels. And so here's the guy from Warner Brothers saying, look, we're going to go in, we're going to sit with the president of the label. He and I had already had a discussion about you, and we want to sign you. And what we'll do on Monday morning is we'll give you, we'll talk with you and see what's up and see what you have planned and who you want to work with as a producer, and this and that, and where you want to record, and how many songs do you have? Can we listen to some demos? All of that kind of stuff. And at the end of this little conversation, he said, and we're prepared to just open the checkbook for you. You just tell us what you want, and we will give it to you. And I'd never been in that situation. I was just like, wow. But the thought was that I'm sandwiched between these 2 record company people, and I don't have a band. The show that we just played was the last show with that lineup, and I would have had to put together another band. And I didn't want to go to them and say, well, Bug Lamp no longer exists, and now it's going to be the Keith Morris Band, which I think that's just such a chiseled dick, limp wrist, like you can't think up a name for your band. You got to name it after yourself. Are you that important? I mean, yeah, there are certain people that are that important, and that many people know. But it was like, I'm certainly not one of them, and I'm not going to do that. But I couldn't stand there and say, hey, you know, this band no longer exists. I didn't say that. I was just kind of like trying to leave all of the avenues open. But I would get back to my friend at Geffen and let her know that, you know, we had the conversation. We had the meeting where I actually told her all of the money that I needed, and it wasn't like it was $1 million that they were prepared to give me. So, you know, I went through all of that crap. I've worked at record labels. Bug Lamp was a fun band. I was kind of, in a really weird roundabout way, I think I was out of my element is what was happening. It was like a whole different scenario because we were more of a hard rock, psychedelic, you know, we would have played with, you know, we would have opened for like Nirvana or it was not a punk rock band. You know, at one point a couple of the guys in the band said, well, we need to cover a couple of your songs because people are familiar with that. And I was just like, okay, well, let's try it out. Let's see what happens. And the response was not that amazing. The band, the first lineup of the band, I thought was great. Just some of the greatest musicians that I've ever played with. And it was certainly going to be something different from anything else I'd done because the two guitar players, one of the guitar players, his name was Daniel Ray. He was the guy who co-wrote Pet Sematary and produced the Ramones record. He comes from that school where it's a very like gung 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 gung, very rock and metallic kind of thing. And the other guitar player had played in a band called Power Memorial, which was a three-piece power trio that was based on like Grand Funk and Trapeze and James Gang, and he was just one of the most interesting characters that I'd ever been around because his girlfriend at the time was modeling for Jean-Paul Gaultier over in France. So we had all of these different oddball, weird angles going on, and it just, for some reason, we weren't out playing enough. I think if we had been busier recording demos and playing live shows, I probably wouldn't have had the problem that I had with the very early lineup.
Damn. Yeah, I've heard one song, Shalalala, I think is what it's called. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, that's the Ramones song. Yes, Howlin' at the Moon.
It's the only song I've heard by Bug Lamp. I can't find anything else.
Well, there's an Alice Cooper track.
Oh, really?
Called The Ballad of Dwight Fry. We did a really, I believe, I want to give it at least a B+, A-.
Yeah, from what I heard of the other track, it sounds pretty good. I wish I could find the physical album somewhere, though. Is there?
There is no physical album.
Oh, damn.
The three songs that we had released were, one was on a soundtrack for a movie that starred John Doe from X and who's the middle Beastie Boy?
Ed Rock.
the Adam, isn't Adam married to the gal from Bikini Kill?
I would have no idea.
I think he's married to Kathleen Hanna.
There's Mike D, Ed Rock, and Adam Yauch who passed away. MCA.
It would have been Ad Rock.
Yeah, probably Ed Rock then. I think Mike D lives in Australia now. I'm not sure.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah, damn. What about a Midget Handjob? I just learned about Bug Lamp and Midget Handjob within the last 48 hours. I didn't even know you were in those bands.
So you were doing a crash course in preparing for your test here with Professor Morris?
Well, I mean, I've known Black...
Was it an all-nighter, or was...
No.
Was there a lot of caffeine involved?
Some white lines.
I'm just being facetious. Midget Handjob basically was just a project that was tossed together. I had come down with diabetes.
Oh, shit.
And I was dying. I had shriveled down to 85 pounds.
Damn.
I looked like one of those. I looked like one of the guys in one of those photos from one of the concentration camps at the end of World War II. And my friend Brett Gerwich, we were speaking and talking about Bad Religion earlier. My friend Brett Gerwich, who is one of the founding members of Bad Religion and owns Epitaph Records, saw me, and apparently the light bulb went on over his head. He said, "We got to do something. We got to help Keith out. We got to do something. He looks like he's ready to die. We got to do something. We got to keep him busy. We got to put a little bit of money in his pocket so at least he can eat and pay his rent. And I'm going to give him a recording contract." What had happened was I had been working in a restaurant down on Sunset Boulevard in Silver Lake called Millie's, and I was basically the bus boy, and I was the pourer of drinks. Like if you wanted a coffee, I would pour you coffee. If you wanted a glass of water, I'd give you a glass of water. If you needed silverware, the silverware would be placed on the table as you were sitting down, and I would be taking your order right about the time you'd settled your ass in your chair or sat at one of the stools on the counter. Anyways, I was also a dishwasher. At one time I was a prep, but the first day of prepping I was slicing tomatoes, and for some strange reason, and this wasn't something premeditated or anything like that, I ended up almost slicing the tip off of my little finger. And so that was my last day of prepping food. Yeah, you can't bleed. See, you can bleed in the tomatoes, and nobody would know that you'd bled in the tomatoes. But you really can't do that. That's a no-no. That's not good. People don't like that. Who knows, what can be spread that way. But anyways, I'm working in the restaurant, and they decide they're going to have a talent show of all of the people that work in the restaurant. And basically what it was guys in bands that, maybe their bands aren't that popular, so they're not playing that much, or they're not touring and they need to work. They need the cash flow. So I was working with a lot of guys like that, and they decided, let's throw a party. We'll get a couple of cases of beer, and we'll just let everybody play acoustic guitars. It was basically, they just opened the restaurant for all of the employees and employees' friends. And I did a thing where I had written down a bunch of what I consider to be lyrics. And so one of the guys that performed with me had gone outside, and one of the palm trees, apparently there had been a wind in the last couple of days, and it blew off some of the big branches off of the palm tree, a big palm leaf. So he went out and he grabbed one of those, and he started swishing it across the floor like in a rhythmic thing. And then I had a guy playing bongos.
Oh, nice.
And then I had a guy playing saxophone. and I just spoke over whatever they played, and that was the birth of Midget Handjob.
That sounds awesome.
You got lost?
No, I said that sounds awesome.
Very easy to get lost. We had a lot of different people come in and out of it's not a band, it's a musical organization. At one time, what was happening is we would play live, and we would have these plastic milk crates filled with broken instruments and like bongos, like broken bongos, and tambourines that had been broken half, and shakers without any sand or any corn or what have you, whatever you're shaking in the shakers, pieces of metal, pots and pans, and like 3/4 drumsticks, like the tips had been broken off, just beat on somebody, and we'd dump them off the front of the stage. And whoever was in the audience that wanted to pick something up and just start hitting on it or beating it against something or hitting it on the floor, that they would join in. And we were very fortunate. See, shit like that can turn into world beat drum circle type stuff, which I'm not into. I never wanted it to ever turn into that, and that was the reason why the pieces of musical junk that were dumped off the front of the stage were exactly that, because you start, like, you give somebody a snare drum and a couple of drumsticks, and then all of a sudden they're going to be playing some kind of marching thing. And I mean, it works at times, but it could have got really out of hand. I mean, we got cacophonous at times. We had 2 sax players. We had an alto sax player, a baritone sax player, and we had 2 guitar players. We had Tony Malone, who had played in the Weirdos and Thelonious Monster and Detox, and we had Chris Bagarazzi, the Seabag. He'd played in a band called Clawhammer, like a really amazing band called Clawhammer. And John Wall was one of the sax players. He was also the sax player and vocalist and guitar player in Clawhammer. We had a couple of we have drummers playing with us, but they're not playing drums. The rule was no full drum kit. You want a kick drum? Great. No snares. We don't need any snares. You want a couple of floor toms? That's fine. As long as you got pots and pans, as long as you got bells and whistles and all sorts of fun things. One of the guys had a rhythm stick. One of the guys actually played bongos. We never had a conga player. It would have been great to have a conga player. I would have loved that. One of the drummers, his name was Quasar. He played in a band called Lutefisk, and we actually played a show at the Roxy on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood, like a block up from the Whiskey A Go-Go. We opened for John Frusciante, who is the guitar player. He had quit the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and he'd already put out a couple of solo albums. And so he requested that we play with him at the Roxy, which that's I hold him in very high regard, because just because he played in the Red Hot Chili Peppers, that's not supposed to be held against him, because there are a lot of people that hate the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and that's fine. Keep on hating. Go do your thing. Go play on the freeway or do whatever you're going to do. I will always be a fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers because Flea is one of my friends.
Yeah, I love Flea.
And Flea actually played with the Weirdos. He auditioned for Black Flag.
He did?
He played in Fear, and he also played in the Circle Jerks. So he has some punk rock lineage, and I have the utmost respect for him.
Wow.
Anyways, getting back to the show with John Frusciante, one of our percussionists, John Frusciante, not John Frusciante, excuse me. We played with John Frusciante. Our percussionist, Brandon J. Quasar, brought no percussive instruments. He had found a broken little ghetto blaster, little plastic ghetto blaster, and he somehow managed to talk one of the stagehands into loaning him a hammer. And all through our set, all he did was he beat on this broken cassette player. I guess what he was eventually trying to do was he was either trying to fix it and make it work, or just smash it to bits.
Wow. That's amazing. I was gonna say that band sounds very New York no wave. You know that scene up there in the late '70s.
I don't think we were as noisy as those bands. I think our influences were pretty different from those bands' influences. We were influenced by Billie Holiday. We were influenced by Roxy Music. We were influenced by Creedence Clearwater.
Oh, wow.
We were also influenced by anybody that was highly repetitious. You know, find a song, listen to the groove, try to reproduce that groove without reproducing that groove.
Yeah.
You know, let's be a little bit more creative. We had our jazz influences. Lately, we've been performing a song based on. It's pretty much a jazz standard because it's been covered by so many jazz musicians. Art Blakely and the Jazz Messengers do a version of a song. It's called "A Night in Tunisia," and I believe Ornette Coleman has done a version. Maybe John Coltrane, Dizzy Gillespie. You know, you just go down the list. There's like 50 versions of the song. So now there's a 51st version of the song played by Midget Handjob.
Nice. Before we get into the next question, I wanted to congratulate you on your 40th anniversary of Group Sex. And that statement sounds kind of strange saying it like that for people who don't know what Group Sex is, but one question I've always had on that album is the artwork. I was told it was taken at a bachelor party somewhere.
You could not be 100% more wrong.
Oh, I felt like I was
what
wrong.
happened was the Circle Jerks played a mock wedding at a skate park down in Marina del Rey. And I want to say the band that played with us was the Adolescents from Orange County.
Oh, dear family.
Great band. See, this is what would happen in those early days of our wave of punk rock in Los Angeles. See, we're third wave. First wave would be X and the Controllers and the Bags and the Dills and the Dickies and the Eyes. Oh, geez, Weirdos, Screamers. Did I say X?
Yeah.
And the Flesh Eaters?
You didn't say them.
Okay. Well, that's just some of them. You know, there was a point in time, and they're the second wave. The first wave would be like the Seeds and the Standells and the Riot on Sunset Strip, even though a lot of those bands were more, they drop acid and be more, they lean more towards garage rock, but they still, like the Seeds pushing too hard,
Yeah,
is very
I
punk
love
rock.
that song.
Yeah. You know, it doesn't. There's certain early songs that are just as much punk rock as any Sex Pistols, Damned, any Avengers, any Agnostic Front, or
I was gonna.
Cro-Mags, or what have you. Any of those bands.
There were a little bit of an
intuition. There were bands playing like the Whiskey A Go Go, like Love, My Little Red Book. Okay. The Doors, Break On Through to the Other Side. You know, these songs have an energy and just enough of a grit and anger to them that makes them like a precursor to punk rock.
I agree.
You know, these guys are laying some groundwork for us. You know, they're help building the foundation that we're going to build our castle on, our impenetrable fortress. You're never going to blow away Fort USA. That's the Weirdos. But anyways, getting back to the Adolescents, you know, we also had another group of these bands that came up around the same time we came up, and that would be Agent Orange. You know, just all sorts of bands, the Angry Samoans, and the whole list of bands. But we're playing this mock wedding for Gerber, and a couple of the Germs are there, and guys from China White, and all the guys from the Adolescents and all their friends, and the kids from the Black Hole down in Orange County. And it's in a skate park down in Marina del Rey. And so all of the skaters are skating and doing their thing while we're setting up. We're setting up down in the bowl. And after we get through playing, there's like 250, 300 kids there. It's like, hey, everybody, we need to shoot an album cover. We need to take a photo for our album cover. So can everybody get down in the bowl? And our friend Ed Culver was there, and he took a photo. That's what you see on the front of Group Sex.
Wow.
Ed Culver took the photo. A gal named Diane Zinkovich took the photo and colorized it, because Ed took a black and white photo. He didn't take a color photo. Ed shot black and white, and Diane Zinkovich colorized it for the album cover.
Damn. Yeah, that's much different than what I've read on the internet.
Yeah.
I didn't think it...
You're hearing it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, I didn't think it would be a bachelor party, because that doesn't really sound too Circle Jerks or punk rock, really.
Well, you know, but they were going to have a big circle jerk at the bachelor party. I mean, what else are bachelors going to do? Unless a stripper shows up and wants to entertain all of them and, you know, make them all happy and all that fun, wonderful stuff.
Yeah, I should ask him, how did y'all come up with the name Circle Jerks? Like,
Greg and I were hanging out with our friend Raymond Pettibone, who did all of the artwork, all of that artwork for the Black Flag, and he, being Raymond, and I had become really good friends because we had a lot of things in common. We loved to drink. We really just loved to drink. We just loved to get obliterated. We also loved going out and seeing live music. Plus, not only was he a big fan of Black Flag, but he was also a big fan of the Circle Jerks, and that was the reason why Greg Hetson and I are standing in his workspace at his parents' house over in Hermosa Beach. And we were there because we wanted to use some of his artwork for a couple of flyers, but we didn't have a band name. We had I'd written a list of like 10 names. And so I showed Raymond the list of names, and he was just kind of shrugging his shoulders, and him and Han, and it's like, I don't really think any of this stuff's that interesting or that cool. I mean, you guys can call yourselves whatever you want, but, you know, I'm still going to love you. You'll still be one of my favorite bands. And in the process, I look up on the shelf and there's a copy of the American Slang Dictionary. And the light goes on over my head. Keith, pull this book down. Let's just start flipping through there. You're going to find a name for the band in there. And page after page after page after page after page after page, finally the name jumps out at me. Circle Jerk. And it gives the definition of what a circle jerk is. And that would be like what they do at the bachelor party if there's no stripper or transvestite hooker or what have you. And I look at Greg, my fingers pointing at the name on the page, and I said, all we need to do is just add an S to that, and that's who we are. That's our band name.
That's fascinating.
And we got immediate approval from Raymond. It was a no-brainer. The best band names are always the just most stupid, ridiculous names you could come up with. The Rolling Stones, taken from a quote where a rolling stone gathers no moss. The Beatles, just the list just continues.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And it was like, why rack our brains over this? It's right there, as big as life.
I've got 2 more circle jerk questions and a few other non-circle jerk questions because I want to hit on off here in a minute. But on your final Circle Jerks album, Oddities, Normalities, and Curiosities, might have said that in a different way, but the artwork on that album, what's going on with the artwork on there? Who came up with that?
We hired an artist to do some artwork for us, and he had a problem with the crack cocaine and couldn't come up with what he was supposed to come up with for like a deadline. And the people at the record company said, we're getting ready to, we're a handful of weeks away from going into production on this. We got to come up with artwork. So they just turned it over to their art department. And so we were left with no choice. It's like, this is what it is. I'm not that put off by it because I was just put off by the whole process. The Circle Jerks recorded an album that we should have never recorded.
You're referring to the last one?
That was just a cash grab. That was just our drummer, who is an accountant and tax preparer, had tax season coming up. Our bass player, Xander, had another band with a bunch of his friends that had just signed a deal with Interscope Records. They're called the Low and Sweet Orchestra, and they had their deadline. Their record was getting ready to come out. Greg was playing in Bad Religion, and they had recorded an album that was getting ready to come out, and he had like 3 months to make this album because he was leaving to go on the Warp Tour with Bad Religion. He was getting ready to be gone for a year.
Oh, wow.
And so here's little old Keith. That would be me. I'm Keith. I'm raising my hand.
Hi, Keith.
Yeah, I volunteer. My name's Keith. Trying to write lyrics, trying to come up with riffs, and not getting a lot of help from the other guys. That record, like I said, was just a cash grab. Let's just take the money. Let's make this record. Not even a mediocre record. We worked with a great producer, and even he couldn't do anything to save these songs. Yeah, it was just, well, how much are we getting? Oh, that's great. Oh, I'll be able to pay my rent for 3 months. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. I could go out and get a steak and a salad and a baked potato and a martini and all that fun shit. And so we ended up making this rushed album with not a lot of preparation and no songs. I think on that record there might have been like two fairly decent songs.
My favorite song was "I Want to Destroy You" from that record.
And that's a cover song.
Oh, it is?
Yes. That was written by Robin Hitchcock, who was in a band called the Soft Boys. And what props that song up and makes it even more punk rock than punk rock could ever be is the fact that Debbie Gibson sings backing vocals on it. You know who Debbie Gibson is?
No, not really.
Okay, well, now you got some more internet homework.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Bust out your Google.
I will.
She was back then what Britney Spears is right now, or Taylor Swift, or just one of the hot girls of the moment.
Oh, interesting.
That happens to sing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another question, which this is kind of another Bad Religion question, but I know you sing on the chorus of Operation Rescue, that song by Bad Religion.
Right.
What's the story behind you doing that?
They called me and asked me to do it. They're my friends.
Oh, wow. That's...
They said, Keith, we're recording this song and we hear your voice. Singing in the chorus, and I'm not doing anything at the time. It's like, sure, buy me a sandwich at Subway.
Hell yeah.
And a bag of potato chips.
I remember when I was younger, and
a Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper's the best soda.
And a chocolate chip cookie. And I'll sing on your song for you.
I remember back when I was a kid and I first heard Against the Grain album, and I heard Operation Rescue. I was like, what the fuck? Is that Keith Moore's voice? Like, damn.
Well, we're friends. There was a time in Circle Jerks history we had baby brother bands. And that would be bands that would, like, if we played, say we played 7 or 8 shows over the course of the year, on 2 of those shows, Social Distortion would be playing with us. On 2 of those shows, maybe Red Cross would be playing with us. On 2 or 3 of those shows, Bad Religion would be playing with us. At one point, I think we did like 3 or 4 shows where Wasted Youth played with us. And the reason why Wasted Youth played with us was because Chet Lehrer, who was the guitar player, was Lucky Lehrer's younger brother. And Lucky Lehrer was the original drummer in the Circle Jerks. So a lot of this is just out of convenience. Some of this is just out of being friends with everybody. Some of this is just like, yeah, let's go to the party. Who's driving? Who's got the money for the 12-pack? That kind of thing. So, yeah, that's the reason why I appear on the Bad Religion record.
What's your influence for your very long dreads? If you still have them.
The excuse?
Or, I said influence. Or
influence, excuse, lazy white guy, not feeling irie. Excuse, I don't have an excuse. My influence is I'm not really influenced by very many of the people that would possess this hairstyle. I mean, I love reggae music, and I love the music that comes from that part of the world. And I've seen Black Uhuru, and I've seen Jimmy Cliff 3 times, and he's amazing. Bunny Wailer.
Nice.
And my favorite, Toots Hebert, he's the guy that fronts Toots and the Maytals. I actually worked with him. I worked on one of his records when I worked at V2 Records. that was a pretty interesting excursion. That was a pretty interesting exercise. But I have no influences when it comes to this hairstyle. This is what happens when you don't wash your hair for 6 months.
Holy shit. Wow.
Yeah.
That's. I've had pretty long hair in the past. Like, the longest I've had is like down to my waist-ish, but not dreads, just long hair. I haven't done that in a while. I don't really. You rock what you got going on, but I personally don't rock long hair. But the question I had, which we're getting into off now, I haven't actually listened to every off album. I've listened to your 2012 album and to your 2014 single, because I saw you live in 2015 at Seattle at the Showbox Soto, which I bought a CD there, and I asked the guard or the bouncer, whatever you want to call him, after the show if I could go ahead and have you sign. He's like, "No, you can't go backstage. You have to pay a lot of money to do that." I was like, "What?"
Say what?
Yeah, the bouncer told me that I had to pay like $100 just to go backstage and have you sign one of my off CDs.
Yeah, we know nothing about anything like that. We would never do that.
I know. I just that's Do you know the name Lori Straight Edge from Seattle? She worked one of your shows back in the 80s or the.
You know what? Maybe I would recognize her if I saw her, but there's so many of these punker dunkers that go to these shows and work these shows throughout the years. You know, when you've done it as long as I've done it, occasionally somebody steps up on Facebook and says, "Remember that time we were smoking cigarettes in the parking lot outside of Bill's favorite bowling alley," or what have you? And it's like, oh, and of course we were drinking beers, and of course I was getting completely obliterated, and of course I was getting close to just blacking out. So yeah, no, I don't remember. So no, I don't remember her, and I don't feel bad because I'm 64 years old, and how am I supposed to remember somebody from, 35 years ago?
I was just going to say, she, that night I was going to see Off Bad Religion, and I don't necessarily remember the other two bands. I think Dillinger 4 may have been, I don't know. But I told her that the bouncer, after the show, he wanted to charge me $100, and she went in there and bitched him out. But unfortunately, you guys in Bad Religion had left. You actually stayed on the stage a little bit longer after your performance than Bad Religion did. They pretty much took off immediately. But it was still a dream come true to see you on stage, though.
Well, they took off immediately because we were on tour with them, and they had to get to the next gig. Maybe they had some radio interviews, or maybe they had some magazine interviews that they had to do, or something was up where they had to be in the next city. They had to wake up the next morning and be able to step off the bus and take care of whatever they needed to do. Or maybe one of the guys had a daughter that lived in that city and he needed to be able to see his daughter, or whatever the excuse. That tour was grueling for us because we were in a van and we were chasing their bus.
Oh shit.
See, what happens is, the bus driver pulls up to the venue, parks where the bus is going to park, gets off, and gets driven to a hotel where they're supposed to get something to eat, take a shower, and go to sleep, and get 8 hours sleep, so that they can get back up and go to the venue and start the bus up as everybody's loading out the back door, so they're ready to leave for the next city. And unfortunately, we don't get to do that because some of the drives are just like, we can't do that. We gotta fucking crash out. You know,
yeah.
We need to get something to eat and crash out and be able to wake up the next morning and get a breakfast and fucking get rolling down the road for anywhere from a 3 to 8 hour drive. You know, and hope that we can pull up and load in and maybe get to do a line check. That's how that works.
One of the things that I've always admired about you, which you said this during that show, you said that as you were coming to the venue itself, that you stopped in at a gas station, and I can't remember your words exactly, but you just made the statement that you're glad that you're not like Jimmy Page or Robert Plant, that you don't have crowds and crowds and crowds of people always, celebrities can't walk down the street without being harassed by paparazzis, and you're really fortunate that you don't have that problem. But and at the same time, you're always, I'm a nobody on YouTube, and you've given me the time of day in this interview. I'm really glad that you're that type of person.
Well, thank you. And, I have no problem answering your inquiries. I'm not doing anything. I'm not going anywhere. I don't have anything else to do. No, actually, I've been doing housework. I'm thinning out my record collection and my CD collection and my DVD collection and my book collection, and trying to vacuum. I'm a hoarder and a pack rat, and it was just time. I gotta be able to breathe in my own space.
I've been in that situation before.
I gotta be able to just turn around. I need to be able to stand naked and achieve an erection and spin in circles and not bang my boner on a box of something.
Oh my god.
Or knock something over. So I've been vacuuming. I actually broke down and bought a vacuum. This was about, I want to say maybe 7 or 8 months ago. There was a yard sale across the street from me, and the guy was selling a used vacuum, and I didn't know if it worked, and so I went on his word, and it works. You got to take care of it.
Yeah.
And you can't let it get too stuffed up with dust and dirt and all of the stuff that it's picking up off the rugs and the floor. But I've been doing vacuuming. I've been doing some mopping. I've been doing a little bit of dusting. I have more dust in here than anybody's supposed to have in a building over the course of their lifetime. And I was also told, occasionally you get a little bit of short of breath, especially at this time with what we've got going on. If you've got asthma or you've got CPOD, pulmonary, cardiac, obstruction disease, or whatever it stands for. If you have any kind of problem breathing, it's one of the symptoms of what's going around right now.
Oh, COVID-19.
So, to alleviate my space of as much dust as I can, I'm doing myself a favor.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Which
Yeah.
I hope this epidemic ceases. Hopefully this summer. They're saying June or July it should be minimalized at least. Dr. Fauci's been saying it's going to be a seasonal thing though.
Well, that's scary.
Yeah, he said it's going
But
to.
we still have SARS. We have bits and pieces and pockets of SARS around the world.
Yeah, and
There'll always be hotbeds of this kind of stuff. What they need to do is they need to come up with the vaccine. They need to come up with a cure. And we still don't even have a cure for the common cold.
yeah, that's fucking crazy.
We probably do. There's certain things that you do, a combination of things. But with this thing that's going on right now, they know when it comes time for any of these epidemics, any of these viruses, the first things first, your immune system is the most important thing that you have. And what you want to do is you want to soup up and beef up your immune system. And how do you do that? Well, zinc is a good thing to be bringing in. You can get it in spray form because this stuff can start in the back of your throat and roll on down into your lungs, go on down into your lungs. C is supposed to be really good. Vitamin D is supposed to be really good. Magnesium. I take a bunch of supplements. One of the things that I learned, okay, here comes the emergency helicopter that's going to, I'm looking at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. that the helicopter's going to land on the helipads, so it's going to be kind of loud for a minute or so.
Oh, it's all good.
Yeah, there he goes. He's landing right now. I can see him.
I've got birds in the background of my house. I don't know if you've been able to hear them or not.
I don't, but how can you be upset with birds?
Birds are wonderful.
That's right. And the fact that after all of the loud music that you've listened to, you're able to hear the birds, you're doing all right.
Yeah, I've on your very earlier statement on me doing a 24-hour crash course, I've been listening to Black Flag and the Circle Jerk since my youth, but I did go on Wikipedia to see if there's anything else, like any really obscure question that I could potentially throw at you, and I didn't even know that you had 2 other bands. So yeah, I know quite a bit about your music history, which is why there's some questions that some people, cause I asked a bunch of my friends, I was like, hey, I'm gonna talk to Keith Morris tomorrow, anyone got any really specific questions or whatnot? And most people just had this, like, you know, the documentary American Hardcore. When I interview musicians, because I've interviewed mostly Philippine musicians because I'm married over there, but like I've interviewed Jack Grisham, I've interviewed Alan of Wasted Youth, John Socks at FUs. I've interviewed quite a few people, but I try to ask questions that I can't find out in other places. Like, you know, I know about you worked at the record store with the Greg Ginn and Erica and all them. I know I've watched your interview with Eric Blair. You talked about how you became part of Black Flag. So when I do interviews, I try to ask questions that haven't, you know, been asked before. Or
yeah, but Anarka, you have to understand that you're asking questions, and you're what are you going to post this?
Just to my YouTube channel.
Yeah, and you have to understand that the people that are zeroing in on your channel, some of them are new people.
Oh yeah.
That don't know, you know. You'll have people that might zero in on your channel that maybe have never heard Black Flag or the Circle Jerks. You know, there's always that possibility. And one of the things, because I get asked this all the time, how can you continue to answer a lot of these same questions?
I've been chewed out by some musicians for that. And I just say it comes with the territory. And there's another part to this, and that is the person that's asking me the question. The people that might be reading the interview or listening to the interview or seeing the interview might not even know who I am, might not even be aware of any of the stuff that I've done. And that's just the way that it is. And I'm hoping that we've had this pretty lengthy discussion. Oh, yeah,
what have we've talked now for about an hour?
Yeah. I only had a few more to throw at you if you've got time for them.
How many more questions? 16? No, I'll only answer two more questions.
Two.
I'm not going to answer all 16 of your questions.
No, I just had two.
I refuse.
Just
because I'm so busy, I've got things to do.
Just the artwork for Off. Who does that artwork?
That's Raymond Pettibone.
Oh, Raymond Pettibone.
My good friend who did all of the artwork for Black Flag and did a bunch of early flyers for the Circle Jerks.
And my final question to you, which I'm really glad this has happened. What caused the Circle Jerks to reunite for the 40th anniversary?
The excuse is Keith's retirement fund.
Oh.
Yeah, because I'm 64 years old, and we only get to play this music for so much longer before it becomes apparent that we're really old and tired and we're not supposed to be doing it anymore. We were presented the opportunity because we are reissuing the first 3 records.
Hell yes.
And our version of Group Sex has been remastered, so it's going to sound a lot better, and it's going to, at the end of side 2, have an extra 9 minutes of one of the first Circle Jerks rehearsals in my garage over in Inglewood, California.
Holy shit, that's awesome.
And the quality of that, your mind will melt, because
my mind's already melting.
Normally when you record on one of those rinky-dinky single speaker cassette decks, little portable cassette decks, the quality gets like overblown and washed out and scrunchy and crunchy and almost unlistenable. Like you really got to pay attention to hear what you're supposed to be listening to. This one turned out really great. It was like a no-brainer. We were trying to think, well, we don't have bonus tracks, but we have like live shows and all of these live performances. Do we have anything from then? And it was like Greg Hudson had this cassette in a box somewhere, and he said, guys, let me look through my cassettes, because I think I have one of our very, very, very first rehearsals over in the Pink House over in Inglewood, California. And he found it, and he made it available for us to listen to on the internet. You know about the internet, the big black hole in the sky. They call it the ether. Things come and go and pass through this big black hole. And he sent it to me, and I was in awe. It's like these kind of recordings aren't supposed to be this quality. This could be like, we could have put this out as an EP, like taken 4.5 minutes for side A and 4.5 minutes for side B, and released it as like maybe a 12-inch EP or 7-inch single, something like that for Record Store Day.
That would have been awesome.
Or take it on tour with it and sell it as more merch for the throbbing crowd. But we're adding that. That's going to be the bonus to the reissue. We're also working on a booklet where we've interviewed everybody from I want to say Greg Graffin and who else? Chris Desjardins from the Flesh Eaters. I think both John and Exene made some comments. It could be a sentence. It could be 3 paragraphs. Chris Robinson, who's the lead vocalist in a band called the Black Crows, he'd cornered me one night in a bar, and he said, you're responsible for what we're doing. He said, we would not be doing what we're doing if it wasn't for you and all of your guys in Southern California, all of that early Southern California punk rock. We grew up listening to that. And I was taken aback because the Black Crows are, they sound like the Faces, or they sound like the Rolling Stones, or the Allman Brothers, or what have you. That's how far reaching the music is.
Amen on that.
I could go down the list. It's just it eludes me right now. I came up with a list of about 60 people.
Damn.
Just varying, just different people that have listened to our music, that have actually stepped up and said, we had one of the great science fiction writers who was living down in Orange County at one point in a fanzine interview when they asked him, so what are you listening to right now? And he said, my favorite band right now is the Circle Jerks. and that would be Philip K. Dick, who is responsible for Blade Runner.
Holy shit. That's amazing.
Yeah.
When can we expect this reissue to hit the shelves?
Well, there's no production right now.
Oh yeah, because of the COVID-19 stuff.
And one of the major vinyl factories, where they press up a ton of vinyl.
Oh yeah, I
down.
heard about that a while back.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, that was what, like 5 months ago?
Yeah, that was terrible news.
Yeah. And with what's going on right now, we're in no hurry. We're gonna get more photos from Ed Culver, who it makes perfect sense because he shot the album cover. And there you have it.
Thank you so much for all this information. Really.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for your time.
And please stay safe out there and keep safe from this virus, man.
I'm going to put a sweatshirt on, put my hat on, and go take a quick 25-minute walk.
Hell yeah, man. Punk rock. Thank you so much, Keith. Appreciate it.
Right on, Anarka. Have a good... well, you're what, evening now?
Early,
late afternoon?
4:45 p.m.
Yeah. Well, have a great rest of the day.
You too, brother. Have a lovely one.
Be well. Stay strong.
Hey, ciao.
Cheers.